Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, staff, councillors. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Dave Augustine, and I'm a councillor for the town of Pelham and mayor of the town of Pelham. And I'm also the chair of the region's budget review process for the 2012 budget. Thank you for joining us this evening. We're very pleased that we have some members of the public here with us, and also thank you to those online who are watching us as we do a live streaming of this public engagement session. Before we get started, I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge some of the regional councillors who are here this evening, who have joined us live, and no doubt there's some online as well. But we have in our presence, we have Councillor Teal representing the town of Fort Erie. We have Councillor Barrick, who's representing the city of Port Colborne, and we also have Councillor D'Angela, who is representing the city of Thorold, and he's also the vice chair of the Budget Review Committee. So thank you very much for joining us this evening. We also have many members of our senior staff here who are prepared to answer questions and get engaged in a dialogue with both people online and also here in our audience. And I would like each of them to introduce themselves. If we can start, Dr. Yeager.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Valerie Yeager, and I'm the Medical Officer of Health and the Commissioner of Public Health.
Good evening. My name is Ken Brothers. I'm Commissioner of Public Works for Niagara Region.
Hi, I'm Brian Hutchings, the Commissioner of Corporate Services and the Treasurer of the Niagara Region.
Hello, Mike Trojan, Chief Administrative Officer for the Region of Niagara.
Good evening, Patrick Robson, Commissioner, Integrated Community Planning at Niagara Region.
Good evening, Joe Matthews, Deputy Chief, Niagara Regional Police.
Hello, my name is Catherine Chislett. I'm the Commissioner of Community Services.
Kathy Cousins, Director, Community Services.
Good evening, I'm Laura Beckwith. I'm the General Manager for Niagara Regional Housing.
Good evening, I'm Tony DeMario, CAO, Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority.
Good evening, Alan Tykerob, Niagara Economic Development Corporation.
Thank you very much, everybody, for your introductions. And I neglected to introduce someone else very special. That is our regional chair, Gary Burrows. Thank you for joining us, Chair Burrows. And we're going to be hearing from Chair Burrows momentarily as we start off this process. Before we do that, Mr. Chair, and others, I would like to thank Doug Martin and the town of Fort Erie for allowing us to use this council chamber. We're actually in the council chamber here for the town of Fort Erie, so thank you very much, Mayor Martin and your council and staff. I see a representative from staff here this evening. Thank you for letting us use your chamber. And I'd like to go through the agenda that we have for you this evening. First, we will hear from our regional chair, as I already indicated, who will bring greetings on behalf of the entire regional council. Then we have a brief presentation by Brian Hutchings, who is our treasurer for the region, and he introduced himself earlier, about the 2012 budget. So he'll be giving us some background information about the budget and especially how it compares to the 2011 budget. Then we will hear from some delegations. We have three registered delegations this evening, and we'll be hearing from each of them. And each of them will have 10 minutes as a maximum to make a presentation to us, and they'll be doing so from this podium here. And we can also, I think each of the delegates will likely ask some questions that members of staff will be able to answer. We have some prepared questions, so some questions that people have sent to us directly in advance of this process, and also we will entertain questions from those in the audience here and those online. So this is being streamed live on the internet, and if you could send us an email or a Twitter or a tweet, and we'll respond to those. I have my BlackBerry here, and I can get the questions, and we can ask those in a series as well. So it's a very interactive evening, we hope, and a time that we can hear directly from members of the public and really go through an engagement process, answer questions, and try and feel out the public participation here. Why are we doing this? We're doing this because regional councillors are extremely interested in the feedback that we receive from residents in Niagara. There is a budget that's been recommended to us from staff at the region, and Mr. Hutchings will go through that. But we want to hear directly from residents, from taxpayers, from ratepayers, about what they think about this particular budget, and also what they think their priorities are for the region and some things that we can focus on next year and in future years. So this entire evening should take about 2 hours to go through, and we hope that it'll be very fruitful evening and a time where we can really have a dialogue with members of the public. Finally, just a word about decorum. I'm sure this won't be a problem, but I always start public meetings this way, that we want to ensure that we adhere to decorum. And certainly here in this particular chamber that we're in the town of Fort Erie, is a beautiful chamber. It lends itself to that. And I think, I'm sure that delegates will, or delegations will adhere to that decorum, etc. So just make sure that we respect everybody's opinion and answer questions in that way, and ask questions in that way. Our goal here is to ensure that people have a better understanding of the budget, but also can participate in the formation of the budget. And so without further ado, I would ask Regional Chair Gary Burrows to bring greetings and to tell us a little bit about that budget. Chair Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight, both here in the Fort Erie Council chambers and online via the region's live web stream. We are here to listen and hear firsthand your comments and questions. I am very pleased to bring greetings on behalf of the Niagara Regional Council. We really appreciate your input and participation in this process. This is the second of 2 community forums on the region's budget. The first was last week in West Lincoln, actually Lincoln. We are holding these sessions because we heard you, our residents, wanted more opportunity to participate. So tonight we are here to do that and to listen. Last February, the region hosted a budget community forum in Niagara Falls on the 2011 budget, and it was very well received, and we hope to continue doing that. In 2011, the Niagara region administered an operating budget of $586 million for levy, of which approximately $283 million came from our property tax base. The remaining $304 million came from other sources, including the Government of Ontario and payments for services by users of those services. The total of both rates and levy in 2011 equaled $740 million. In the 2012 proposed operating budget for rate and levy is $781 million, of which approximately $297 million comes from your property tax base. For 2012, our staff are recommending a 1.3% affordability increase, or $17 on current operations, with a 2.9% increase for sustainability. This includes intermunicipal transit, interim police facilities, the capital gap finance strategy, and reserves funding. The total proposed increase per household is 4.2% recommended by staff, or approximately $55. The remaining $484 million comes from other funding sources. Regional Council is also responsible for approving funding for the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority and the Niagara Regional Police Service. We also approve budgets for Niagara Regional Housing and the Niagara Economic Development Corporation. Many of the programs and services provided by the region and its agencies are funded not only from your property tax dollars, but also from other levels of government, particularly the province of Ontario. Many of these programs and services are mandated by the province, and we are legislatively obligated to deliver them. The average homeowner in Niagara with a house worth approximately $220,000 pays $1,534 in regional taxes annually. That's the 2011 dollars. These are big numbers, and we must ensure our budget is both affordable and sustainable for our Niagara taxpayers. We commend regional staff and the Chief Administrative Officer, Mike Trojan, for their commitment to affordability and enhancing transparency and public consultation in the budget process. To those of you here tonight and joining us online, we look forward to your questions and your comments. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair Burrows. As the Chair outlined, the purpose of the event that we're doing tonight, this meeting, is to help us, each of us around this table, to better understand what our residents are wanting in terms of the 2012 budget, and to really engage in a dialogue regarding that. As I mentioned earlier, for tonight's presentation, we will be focusing on the 2012 budget and how it compares with the taxes that would have been levied in 2011. On the screen here, you'll see that the 2000 budget process didn't start this evening. It actually started in June of this year, when Regional Council, through the budget process, gave guidance on the 2012 budget. Then we started reviewing things like the methodology that we use to assign rates for waste management, for water and wastewater rates. That was in September. Later in September, we received presentations regarding the operating and capital budget and an update on that, on how staff were progressing, given the guidance that Regional Council gave them in June. And then we also had an update regarding the budget to actual for up to our second quarter. We had a full day of budget on October 13th, where we discussed the operating budget and the presentations for that. We went through an entire process of looking at the various departments through the region in a coordinated way about those operating budgets. Then on October 20th, we had further presentations, and especially from the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority with their budget. Last week, we had two public engagement type of sessions. The first was a water and wastewater meeting regarding budgets and operations. That was held on last Monday on October 24th. And then we had a public engagement session, as the regional chair indicated, in Lincoln last Wednesday, similar to this. And tonight, we're here in Fort Erie, and we're very pleased to be here and to listen to feedback. Tomorrow, we will be looking to the capital budget and actually looking to approve the capital budget for 2012. So council will deliberate this tomorrow evening at regional headquarters, and also look at the operations budget and how that's updated. We'll also hear feedback from the Niagara Regional Police Services and the Economic Development Department regarding their budgets for 2012. Next week on November 10th, we'll be going through the rate budget and hopefully approving that budget. We're going to get another update on the operating budget, and then finally on December 1st, we look to approving the operating budget for 2012. This is an aggressive schedule in terms of the lead time that is here, but Regional Council has said that it wants to try to certainly approve the capital budget far in advance of 2012 so that we can start getting projects going and tenders out for some of those projects and get better pricing early in 2012. Regional Council has also said that it wants to approve the operating budget early. So there is time for us to go through it, but it is an aggressive schedule, but we can't meet it without involvement from the public. I'm going to, I think, then turn to our Commissioner of Corporate Services, the Treasurer for the Niagara region. He has a brief budget presentation that he'd like to go through to talk about the 2012 versus 2011 budget. Commissioner Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just looking at your schedule, you've gone through very well. In total, up to December 1st, 2011, this schedule, just in meetings alone, regional councilors will put in 41 hours of their time into this budget up to December 1st from the 6:30 to 10 o'clock. So it's quite an extensive amount of time council has put into this budget and will put into this budget. It's actually three budgets: a capital budget, a rate budget, and an operating levy budget. So it's an incredible amount of time, incredible amount of work on everybody's behalf. So And looking at our proposed 2012 budgets and programs that are funded by your property tax dollars, really looking back at the budgets, and I've talked very quickly about rate budgets and operating budgets and capital budgets. Really, an operating budget is very similar to your house and the day-to-day costs to run your house, things like gas, gasoline, groceries, and phone bill to operate your house day-to-day. But a capital budget is things that are more longer-term investments, similar to your car or house. So daily, the region's business for Niagara Region pays for its boards and agencies, and pays for programs and services, including staff to deliver those services, supplies, and repayment of debt for major projects, and I'll go through those services. The capital budget really funds things that are annual purchase of capital, things like roads, water treatment plants, sewers, buildings, machinery, and equipment. Not on the screen is rates, and those are items that aren't in your property tax dollars, but they're included there. There's a fee methodology to be charged. That's for your water and your wastewater, as well as your waste collection. So there's three budgets: the operating budget, capital budget, and rate budget. Regional Council in 2006 looked at affordability strategy, and they brought in, I'll show you some numbers from 2006 or even 2001 on, but really the methodology was to look at a strategy their tax did not go up greater than the combination of taxpayer income growth plus assessment growth. What was presented to Regional Council on June 9th was a range staff asked for, a range of 3 to 4.8%. What was approved by Council was 1.9%, for staff to come back no more than 1.9%, including capital. Sustainability, and it's not just about affordability. Also make sure that we're not just being affordable. We also make sure we need to be sustainable, and that our organizations can continue, that we have proper amounts of monies and reserves and proper amount of things budgeted for to make sure our organization is sustainable. It's no different than your house. You can't not stop repairing pieces in your house and repairing pieces. Eventually your house will fall down if you don't keep repairing your house or renovating. So the budget also, this budget will talk about some sustainability measures which Council will deal with on November 10th and December 1st. The property tax in Niagara Region, on average, and this is an average across all 12 municipalities, it ranges at each one, but on average the region's portion of the property taxes is 49%. The local tier here in Fort Erie, the town of Fort Erie, it's not exactly, but the example would be 34%. And the school board or education would be about 17% on your local property taxes. And as the regional chair said, that's approximately $1,540 for regional taxes included in that. And basically at 49%, the total tax on a house valued at $219,000 or $220,000 will be $3,161. When I talked about the affordability strategy, you can see since 2003, our net taxes, that's after growth, have ranged from 5.4% to a low of negative 1.37% last year, approved by Regional Council. Many people and local municipal politicians also are well aware since 2008, there has been some uploading of some dollars for Ontario Disability Support Program back to the province. It's a provincial program. It was not run by the region, but we were paying 20% of those costs. What we've done here with these dots, try to show everybody out there that if we didn't have uploading, these would be the increase in costs for Regional Council without uploading. That would have been an average over the last 4 years of a 1.5% increase in property taxes if we didn't have that provincial uploading. And we thank the province for that uploading, but also trying to clearly, transparently show that we were still in affordability targets, even with uploading excluded. Again, looking at just numbers, these are basically the numbers from that previous graph. We've seen numbers of 5.81% in 2001 to as low as 1.37. And looking at the last 5 years, comparing ourselves to others, the average rate of increase for the region of Niagara has been 1.25%. Versus a high of 18.8% in the Durham region and number of numbers in between, but we've been average of 1.25% over the last 5 years. This year's budget, which the chair has highlighted very quickly, we're proposing a budget that sees an increase of about $6.5 million or 2.3%. What we now have is assessment growth, and I think the last session we had in Lincoln, there were some questions about this. Assessment growth is the increase in new growth. It's not the average prices of homes going up across the Niagara region. It's actually new growth, new buildings, new growth, not just assessment changes by MPAC. And make the point clear, we don't operate MPAC. MPAC is run by the agency of the provincial government. But this is all new growth. We're predicting the Niagara region to be about 1%. So according to our affordability strategy, we reduce that. At this point in time, staff have prepared a budget, as regional chair has mentioned, of 1.3% or $17 more. We've also proposed, there's some sustainability decisions, which I'll highlight in the next sheet, approximately 2.6% and some new programs of 0.2%. All told, these two together are $37.36 more on the property taxes, bringing the total to 4.2% or $54.42 on an average house of $219,000. When I earlier talked about affordability versus sustainability, there are a number of things that have been on the budget in previous years that have come out of reserves. They have not been budgeted to the taxpayer. Intermunicipal transit came out of reserves of $2 million. Interim accommodation funding for the police till they moved Detachment 1 and Detachment 2, and the headquarters was funded out of reserves. We're looking at putting that in the proper place, which is on levy, and using some of the OMPF monies to offset that over the next 3 years. And I'll talk more during our capital budgets, but we have seen an increasing growth in our gap in our capital funding, what we can actually finance, what we need in capital requirements across the Niagara region. And staff are suggesting to council and recommending to council that the levy be impacted by increased by 1% to pay for this increase in capital requirements and to reduce the gap to our roads and bridges across the Niagara region. We also have a diminishing amounts on our contingency reserve, and we're requesting that we increase that by $2.3 million to make it viable. So all told, those are 2.6%. And we have some new programs that are primarily in the Commissioner of Integrated Community Planning's area. The Gateway Economic Zone is $200,000. Waterfront Strategy of $100,000, and also Smarter Niagara Incentive increase from $750,000 to $1 million, which is an increase of $250,000, which would be 0.2%. So all told, those are 2.8%, and looking at the previous slide, would total 4.2%. Regional Chair has highlighted very well our programs, and most people don't realize the region of Niagara is a $781 million organization, runs a multitude of programs, which I'll highlight at a very, very high level, and even at that, it's a lengthy presentation to go through. We thank our federal and primarily our provincial partners for funding $344 million of our operations to a total net of $436 million. From the property tax base, that's $289 million. With sustainability, $8 million. And from our rates, our water, our wastewater, and our waste area, it's about $139 million. And including capital, if you look at our financial statements of $150 million, we're a $920 million organization, which is equivalent in size to an organization such as Leon's, or almost twice the size of the province of Prince Edward Island. Looking at the capital budgets, you'll see our capital budget is a total of $148 million. Regional Council will be looking at this tomorrow night and debating a report that will be brought forth by staff. The things range from information technology solutions to a number of our properties management issues, community services, and some repairs, as well as buying some ambulances, our fleet operations and transportation. These are our roads, and then some monies for Niagara Regional Housing, police, waste and waste management, and water. Looking at financing this, we approximately have that $148 million. There is a $2.9 million asterisk on this slide. We are recommending council increase that by 1%, which would cover that gap, and that'll be discussed tomorrow night. So, to my presentation, which my chair, Augustine, has so eloquently laid out for me, very, very quickly, you can see where do your tax dollars go. This is a chart that I'll show at the beginning and I'll show back at the end. And the things in the middle are a bit of the piece in the middle of the sandwich are all our programs, and I'll highlight very quickly all those programs and their cost to you as a taxpayer. And it's based on regional taxes of $1,541, or a house assessed at almost $220,000. You can see the waste collection is in there to bring that total up to $1,541. But all the various programs you can see highlighted there. When we look at community services runs our senior services, 8 homes for the aged in the Fort Erie area. Gilmore Lodge is one of those homes. It's an 80-bed home here in Fort Erie, but provides services for 1,500 seniors, as well as 4,000 seniors through seniors community programs. Our children's services area runs child care centers and resource centers throughout the Niagara region and supplies various services to them. Areas like ACW Early Learning in Stevensville and Kids First Child Care in the Fort Erie area and Fort Erie Cooperative Nursery School, as well as my favorite, the Turtle Club Daycare Program. Various programs they run, as well as social assistance and employment opportunities is also in this area. There's an office over on Central Avenue, and it provides services throughout the whole Niagara region for 35,500 residents monthly in the whole Niagara region. And I think that's approximately 837 cases, or 8.1% of the cases in the Fort Erie area. Emergency shelter and homelessness programs provide services for over 9,000 persons and residents annually in the Niagara region. And those in Fort Erie will be familiar with the Peace Bridge Newcomer Center, and many refugees and newcomers spend time at emergency shelters here in the Fort Erie area. Cost of running these services, our senior services area, last year was approximately $21.23. This year that'll drop by about 9 cents to $21.12. Our children's services area is a $31 million budget, but Niagara's share is $6.2 million that we pay versus the cost sharing with the province. A $28.55 for this year, which is a little bit up from last year. Social assistance, or also known as Ontario Works, or a welfare program, is $15.90 per taxpayer in the Niagara region, which is approximately $25 million. And I mentioned their emergency shelter, hostels, and homeless programs is about $2.45 per person, bringing a total for the community services area $168.02, which is down by about 45 cents from last year. Public health, they deliver a multitude of services across the Niagara region: communicable disease control, immunization, sexual health, dental health, environmental health, as well as chronic disease and injury prevention, family health programs, and emergency medical services, also known as ambulances. They respond to calls to over 72,000 calls annually. You can see in the general public health area, the promotion, protection, prevention area, total budget is $36 million. The Niagara share is $6.9 million, and it's $31.83 previously in 2011, and that's gone up by about a nickel to $31.88 since last year. Our EMS, or ambulance services, $36.6 million, $16.1 million of net cost to Niagara citizens, $74.33, or almost 6 cents less. And you can see the total cost of $106.21, which is a penny less than last year's amounts. Integrated community planning, I mentioned earlier. This is a department that does numerous functions, but includes such things as climate action, culture plan, our Healthy Communities Initiative, Sustainable Niagara, supporting effective council committee process, as well as proactive communications like tonight. And it also will be looking at accommodating new council business plan priorities, such as the Gateway Economic Zone, the Waterfront Enhancement Strategy, and Smarter Niagara Incentive updates. Total cost of this program is about $28 per taxpayer, and it's up just a bit, about a nickel from last year. Leadership and governance. This is off the office of the regional chairman, who spoke just earlier, as well as members of our council, our 31-member council, as well as our chief administrative office. They provide overall leadership and administrative leadership to council as well as to staff. It's a small budget comprising the regional council, office of regional chair, and the CAO, and it's primarily personnel costs. The budget there is $10.70, almost down 23 cents from last year per taxpayer. Corporate services. This is my department that provides financial services as well as legal services, human resource programs, as well as facilities management to our 108 properties across the Niagara region, and IT solutions to all the information technology solutions. This budget was $14.4 million cost after recoveries from various departments, and the net cost is $61.17, up about 40 cents from last year. Kind of a general account, and it's a large account, but things in here such as debt charges of $30 million from all our capital projects, emergency phone. People don't realize the region pays for operating 911 emergency phone of $1.2 million. Contingency amounts in case things go. We have some contingency reserve across the year in case we have some unexpected costs throughout the year. Responsive Region Program initiated by Regional Council to look at some savings and efficiencies in various programs across the Niagara region, as well as capital financing of $8.9 million. This comes out of the current budget. And impact costs. I mentioned this earlier, Municipal Property Assessment Corporation costs of near $6 million we pay to impact to have our properties assessed across the Niagara region. And last but not least, we actually make money on investment income, almost approximately $11 million a year off our investments in bonds and GICs. Public Works. Public Works is divided into two slides here. One is basically the levy requirements. On the first slide, our transportation services outlined in this slide maintains over 750 kilometers of roads in the Niagara region, as well as 179 bridges and culverts, and 295 traffic signals, including snow removal services. Our development services area, they review over 550 development applications, as well as approval and inspection of 370 private sewage systems annually. You can see the administration costs have been reallocated across the programs for costing methodology and have gone down this year. And transportation has increased by about almost $5 per person, and development services has maintained the same. And I'd like to include that the transportation excludes the sustainability items of intermunicipal transit at this point in time. Public Works rates. I mentioned earlier the rates budget is different. It's basically what we charge separate and apart from the levy. The taxes, the property taxes. Waste management includes curbside collection of recyclables, organics, and garbage and recycling facility at 14 landfill sites. We process 59 billion liters, I said billion with a B, of water per year treated at 6 plants and transmitted through 53 facilities and 307 kilometers of water mains. We also treat 79 billion. So it's not a typo, folks. We actually send out 59 billion, and we actually take in almost 20 billion liters more of wastewater every year is collected at our 11 plants and 123 pump stations and 316 kilometers of wastewater mains. Looking at those costs, the average cost per household for waste management is about $168. An estimated decrease is about $215. I always like to divide this out by the 52 weeks in the year, and it comes approximately just over 3. I think it's in the back, but just over, I think it's the back slide, but just over $3.50, if my memory serves me correct, per resident to pick up my garbage at the end of my drive every week. So, water and wastewater is an average regional cost of household is about in 2012 of $423. Looks like an increase of about $14 per resident. Our agency boards and commissions. They all have separate boards and commissions, include Niagara Regional Police Services, our Provincial Court Administration, our Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, Niagara Regional Housing, and Niagara Economic Development Corporation. They're all here and being represented today. They include, Niagara Regional Housing includes various owned units, 160 owned units that Niagara Regional Housing owns and operates here, places like Bowden Streets, and they also have 54 family and 62 senior. That includes 54 family units and 62 seniors across, not just including Bowden Street, but other properties. And includes various other housing providers, which have 429 units in the Fort Erie area. The police budget is $137 million gross, with $124 million net, which includes it's about $576. Per taxpayer in the Niagara region in 2012. Provincial Court, this is actually when you receive tickets from, I guess, our friends of the police and OPP officers and the MTO. This is actually a revenue producer for municipalities. We share this 50-50 with the local municipalities, and it brings in $4.62. Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority is net cost to taxpayers about $30.28. Niagara Regional Housing, gross budget of $49 million. After some cost sharing with the province, I think it's mainly federal money. It's 26.6 as well as rents. The net cost to the taxpayer is $122, and Niagara Economic Development Corporation is $8.99 at this point in time. So overall, Mr. Chair, you can see all these numbers are all tallied at the end. I apologize, I had my memory wrong. I looked at the garbage collection, I thought it was $3.50, it's $3.22 per week, so I was off 28 cents. So, but our total tax of $15.41 is divided into those various services, and I will just admit that I did skim the high level of all those services. Many more services included in those. So we'd like to thank everyone, and I'll pass it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and no doubt we'll get into some of those services as we progress through the evening. And for those that are online, you probably know this already, but those here, that PowerPoint presentation that our commissioner went through is available in the back. Also, it's available on the region's website, and you can download it there and consider it and take a look at it at a later date. Now we are moving to our next segment, which is delegations, where we hear directly from people after we've had that background from staff. And the format for this evening is follows. I'll be calling each of the delegations in the order that they pre-registered to speak, and I will ask them to speak here at this podium. There are some wires on the ground, so just watch those as you make your way up to the podium. You're going to kind of speaking at the audience, but also to us here at the around this table. We'll be strictly limiting the delegations to 10 minutes, and hopefully there'll be some time in that for dialogue and questions and real public involvement and engagement on that. So without further ado, we will hear, and I hope he's ready. Hear from there he is, Willie Noyles, who is the Vice Chair of the Niagara Prosperity Initiative, and he's pre-registered, and it says here that he's going to be talking about poverty reduction strategies. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Noyles.
Councilors, regional staff, and fellow Niagarans. First, thank you guys for holding these budget consultation meetings that allow Niagara residents to share their thoughts on budget priorities. As you mentioned, I am here in a unique role as the newly elected Vice Chair of the Niagara Prosperity Community Committee, which grew out of the Niagara Prosperity Initiative. We thank Council for the wisdom they showed in 2008 when they approved the formation of a committee dedicated to fighting the sometimes crippling poverty in some of our neighborhoods. And as we know from a report released just yesterday, food bank usage has gone up, so things aren't getting any better out there. Our work began with a $1.5 million investment from the region, which was the savings that municipalities realized from the province's uploading of the children's portion of social assistance. The province requires these savings be reinvested in the community to maintain and build local programs for families and children. And by investing these savings in the Niagara Prosperity Initiative, the region is meeting this requirement. And we thank Council for continuing to make this necessary investment each year. In our first year, the immediate concern with the dollars was responding to the gap that was left by the province's introduction of the Ontario Child Benefit that removed back-to-school monies from families on social assistance. Projects that we approved that year included gift cards for food, shoes, bus passes, and other programs that met that immediate need. In the second year, we began to focus on projects that would help people in neighborhoods move towards prosperity. And since then, we've focused on those individual neighborhoods identified by the region's own mapping tool as those that are at risk or in need. Each time a request for proposals has been issued, a review committee comprised of community members and regional staff has been formed. Those from the social service agencies have not participated, ensuring there were no conflicts. Each year, the review process has been refined, taking the comments of reviewers into account. I've had the opportunity to sit as a reviewer for the past 3 years, and as Councillor Maves and Beatty are aware from their participation in the last review in early summer, the decisions aren't always easy. There's always more worthy projects than there is funding available, and that's a testament to the various groups and agencies in Niagara who are dedicated to making their neighborhoods better and helping low-income Niagarans. There have already been success stories from the various approved projects. One citizen who purchased fruits and vegetables from the Fort to Port Good Food Box program wrote, "If I can come up with $20 for the boxes, I know I will get enough to do for a few weeks." This program fits in nicely with the region's focus on reducing obesity and ensuring people are eating healthy foods. The Good Food Box program provides a substantial amount of healthy food at a price that is cost-effective for users and has an added benefit of supporting local growers. And a youth who participated in the Niagara Neighborhood Awakening program that was run in West Lincoln and Thorold wrote, "I have made new friends here, and by coming here I put myself less at risk of after-school bullying. I enjoy coming to the program because now I am not alone after school." As councillors will recall from the video that Dr. Yeager premiered last week about Sarah, who ended up in the ER because she got hurt after school while her mom was working, this program is not only providing youth with a safe environment after school, but they have the resources to complete their homework and they're meeting new friends. The Back to Basics training program, which ran at Port Colborne and Waynfleet, offered skills in low-cost food preservation and safe food handling. One Port Colborne resident wrote, "We need more education centers that teach nutrition, cooking, life skills, budgeting." The food for the preserves and cooking sessions were provided to participants at no cost through that program. Or the Three Bridges Revitalization Program, which assisted individuals with volunteer opportunities where they could acquire the skills necessary for obtaining employment. One participant wrote, "The client services staff referred me to the Reach Out Center to volunteer. I help prepare the meals for the 60 people that come to lunch. The best thing is that I am now working again. I have an income, also I feel good about myself. I've learned a lot of different ideas for cooking in the kitchen, and I love getting out and being with people." That's just the type of feedback I enjoy hearing because it confirms that we made the right decisions about the programs we approved. As I said at the beginning, the Niagara Prosperity Community Committee grew out of the Prosperity Initiative. The Community Committee is focused on changing the public's perception of people living in poverty, improving collaboration and actions in poverty reduction efforts by all stakeholders to achieve more successes, and engaging and including all members of the community. We've already begun to make strides on this last goal by identifying and inviting members of the community and small business owners who want to make a difference in their community. And task groups have been formed to start work on the remaining goals. This committee is completely separate from the Prosperity Initiative, but the successes from the Prosperity Initiative support and enhance the work we're doing as a committee. The Volunteer Community Committee came about from Council's wise decision to invest those savings from social assistance into projects that are benefiting people in their neighborhoods. We encourage Council to continue to invest those savings into projects that are bringing prosperity to Niagara. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Noyles, for your presentation. I like how you've put it together, and having served on that committee a little bit with you, how you've condensed the years of service on that and put it together.
Quite a lot to condense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for that. I know that my colleagues around the regional council table will be interested in reviewing that. Is it because I don't know that we've had specifically an update with as much depth as you've given.
Probably not, no. But I know that Sarah Panisi will be making a presentation to the Community and Public Health Committee meeting next week.
Okay, perfect. So we look forward to that. I wonder if you could give your report, or you could email it to Ms. Anderson, who's in the back,
Yeah.
that we can include it along with notes from this meeting.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We really
you.
appreciate it, and thank you for your work on that committee as well.
No problem.
Appreciate
Thank you.
it. Thank you. Thank you again. I've just been signaled that our next presenter is here. It's George Jardine. He's here. I don't know if that's him on the cell phone. Is that him? Well, is George Jardine here? No, he is not here. Okay. Should he arrive, I hope somebody will signal me on that. We do have our third presenter, and that is Keithio Mwanza, who is the Director of Policy and Government Relations with the St. Catharines and Thorold Chamber of Commerce. Thank you very much, Mr. Mwanza, for joining us this evening. Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you. A few clarifications. It's Keithio Mwanza, and it's the St. Catharines Thorold Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you. What did I say?
You said and Thorold. It's sort of a...
Thank you. You put them together. Excellent. I'm sorry about your name as well.
No, that's okay,
Please
Mr.
proceed.
Councillor Augustine. Indeed. Not the first time, and I would imagine not the last. Good evening, Chair of the Budget Review Committee of the whole, regional councillors, regional staff, and members of the public. My name, as you heard, is Keithio Mwanza, and I'm the Director of Policy and Government Relations at the St. Catharines Thorold Chamber of Commerce, and coordinator of our Regional Budget Working Group. The Chamber of Commerce, for a bit of background, is a member-driven organization that was founded in 1867 with a current membership of 1,200 associations and organizations that collectively employ more than 28,000 people. We're the largest business organization in Niagara, one of the largest in Southern Ontario, and privileged to serve as a voice of business in St. Catharines, Thorold, Niagara. Thank you for the opportunity to provide input on the 2012 regional capital and operating budgets as a means to actively participate in creating a region that fosters opportunity and at the same time provides an affordable environment in which families can live and enjoy a sustainable quality of life. First, we would like to applaud Council and staff for recognizing the importance of an engaging and detailed budget process. As you know, for many years, the Chamber had recommended that the budget process be designed in a way that meaningfully allowed stakeholders to participate. This year's budget process has provided the level of detail, insight, and a clear identification of some of the key challenges which the region as an organization faces. As we've stated previously, the St. Catharines Thorold Chamber of Commerce is a committed partner in the region that seeks to work towards creating an environment that is attractive for investment and business growth, as well as a place in which families can live and prosper. We are not a tax coalition group that conducts a line-by-line review of the budget. We believe that the region has capable senior management that could conduct such reviews, and we believe that Council and the executive management of the region is responsible for such detailed accounting of the approximately, as you heard today, $800 million budget. The Chamber's role is to provide input and guidance at a macro level. This macro approach is best characterized by the Chamber's report, Supporting Prosperity Through Effective Government in Niagara. The report was a culmination of a survey that was conducted through the Chamber network in Niagara and examined areas in which Niagara's approach to governance and service delivery could be modified to facilitate a more coordinated, efficient public administration. As you know, Supporting Prosperity Through Effective Government in Niagara was widely circulated in the last municipal election, both for regional and city councils. Councillors endorsed many of the recommendations, and the report was favorably received in the media, at public forums, and by our membership. It is with this report in mind that the St. Catharines Thorold Chamber of Commerce again this year established the Regional Budget Working Group. The Regional Budget Working Group invited representatives from all the chambers of commerce across Niagara. The purpose of the committee is to build consensus on issues impacting business across the region that have implications in the regional operating and capital budgets. The Chamber's comments this evening are informed by the empirical data collected as part of the development of the report Supporting Prosperity Through Effective Government in Niagara, in addition to the input of the members of the Chamber's Regional Budget Working Group. The Chamber is encouraged by the response that Council and staff have had to our recommendations in the past. These include approval and inclusion in the budget of an internal auditor model to be known as a Regional Responsiveness and Effectiveness Team, as was mentioned by the Commissioner. Finding efficiencies demonstrated by the recommendations to consolidate the Provincial Offences Act program, including courtrooms, associated operations, and administration and support services into a single facility. in addition to the commitment to do a full review on long-term care facilities, as well as the increased community improvement plan funding, as was mentioned, as the smart growth increase in funding. While these are all important steps, the region still faces a number of key challenges that will require policy innovation that involves the private sector in order to tackle them. These include, over the years, the region has expanded beyond the rate at which it has grown in real assessment and levied. This is demonstrated by the cumulative 5-year increase to 1.5% that was demonstrated in the slideshow. However, actual expenditures in this time period have grown by over 15%. The lack of strategic policy options to leverage the provincial uploading, as was covered earlier in the presentation, the provincial uploading, not the policy options piece, which we have long spoken to. Large gaps in the 10-year capital affordability strategy, even with upper-level government stimulus. Reserve spending without a plan for long-term sustainability. Escalating human resources costs related to collective bargaining arbitration and pension contributions. These are very real challenges that have to be addressed in a dynamic fashion. In addressing these areas, the region would be sending an important signal to the business community that the region values the input of the private sector and is able to innovatively manage public funds to provide best value for service matched with fiscal prudence. We believe that sound public finances make it possible to maintain a competitive tax burden and ensure both quality and sustainability of public services. They're evidence of stability for individuals and businesses, as well as encourage economic growth and wealth creation. With that in mind, the following issues have been raised as part of reviewing the budgets and understanding the region's challenges. One, there is a need to for intensive examination and assessment of municipal services to ensure core services are delivered effectively and efficiently. The region faces many long-term costs. It must program innovate to provide the best value for money for programs and spending, as well as work with both the for-profit and non-for-profit private sector to deliver programs. The Chamber therefore recommends that in this financial year, a full-scale intensive program review be completed. This review would determine the level of intensity with which the region needs to be involved in various service areas. This is certainly something that the Chamber believes is a practice in other jurisdictions where the fiscal framework is completely being reviewed federally, provincially, and municipally. There is need to intensively look at programs, and with the regional responsiveness team, perhaps there is a clear avenue by which that intensive review can be conducted and executed in this year. Two, as the region develops strategies to tackle its ongoing escalating operational and capital costs, the private sector certainly has a role to play. This should include designing and executing a model for which the region can contract out services and ensure a level of service through service level agreements. In addition, develop financial thresholds for the exploration of public-private partnership models. By developing a strategy like this, the region could dynamically involve the private sector in the provision of service while managing long-term costs. Three, again, we are recommending the development of a long-term budgeting strategy for operating and capital budgets. As we have stated before, a long-term tax predictability forecasts provide the business community with an idea of the rate at which their taxes will fluctuate over time. It is a vital tool when businesses are planning. One such long-term budget strategy has been cited a number of times, and that is the 10-year capital affordability strategy. However, this strategy needs to be better solidified if it is to be an effective fiscal planning tool. Finally, with the business plan near completion and approval, in future budgets, it should be the principal guide in building the budget. This should be made explicit in all budget documents and presentations under consideration. The budget should be guided year to year by a consistent vision, and doing so would allow a means to evaluate the budget process and to ensure that the goals of the region and stakeholders are being maximized. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present this evening, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Mwanzia. I hope I have it correct there. Appreciate that, and certainly I want to start by saying that we certainly appreciate, Regional Council does, and myself, the ongoing feedback and review that we get from the St. Catharines Thorold Chamber of Commerce, and now as we understand, from this regional budget working group that has been established. So thank you very much for that. I wonder if the last point that you raised was really talking about the budget as following through with the vision of regional council, and I wonder if the regional chair maybe wants to just touch on our process that we're following to get that business planning session going, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you and good evening. It is an ongoing pleasure to work with the St. Catharines Thorold Chamber of Commerce, and in fact other chambers as well. It is that business input that is making a difference. Certainly as we look at economic development, and council is committed to doing a lot of these reviews and have already started doing that. So a lot of what you're talking about, I believe, is already in process and certainly part of our business planning process, which is not quite complete at this point, but leads down the same path as you are suggesting. So I believe working together, first of all, working openly so that you can see and residents in general can see where we're going. I think we're going to find we are on the same track, and I think you'll be pleasantly pleased with the amount of work that our staff have done, and I sit in on many of the meetings, and staff get it, and staff are very determined to make this process work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that commentary. I think as I mentioned in my opening remarks, certainly the evolution of the budget process over the last two budgets demonstrates a clear understanding of some alignment between the Chamber of Commerce, staff, and Regional Council as related to budget. The delivery of services and the costs and how to pay for those services, and the involvement of the private sector in some fashion, perhaps we might differ on slightly, but I'm sure that we'll be able to resolve it with all parties concerned being happy with the outcome.
Thank you very much. Just a point of clarity, two points. Some of the major things you talked about are sort of, you talked about four things as I understood, and again, I look forward to receiving your written submission, and I know all of council does, and if you can pass that to Ms. Anderson later. But you talked about a total program review, a design model which would use P3 models, and a long-term strategy that's solidified. I guess two just questions for clarity, and then we can perhaps enter into a dialogue as following this meeting. Are anybody else doing sort of a design model that you know of for P3? And also, when you say a long-term strategy solidified, what do you mean? So kind of a two-part question, if you don't mind.
Sure. I'll speak to sort of the service level agreements, because that is, I'd call it a relatively new policy innovation. As you know, the economic development model talks about that and talks about how to use that as an accountability tool. I think that can be extrapolated, or the Chamber of Commerce certainly believes that there is opportunity to extrapolate that service level agreement model into other areas and use that as an accountability tool. So therein lies something that obviously council believes is a workable model as far as managing long-term costs, specifically related to personnel and the benefits associated with that, through things like a service level agreement. In terms of the solidifying of long-term budgeting strategy, and specifically the capital affordability, it continues to be our concern that number seems to grow in terms of what the number actually was. Certainly, there is an understanding that you will never be able to know completely what your capital affordability gap is. But looking at a number of years of upper level government stimulus, that number, the capital affordability gap, grew rather than became smaller. And that becomes a real concern, because this strategy is supposed to guide long-term investment on the capital side. But when we looked at 2 years of upper level government stimulus that called for, I think, approximately $50 million, ended up being somewhere in the $90 million range. But the capital affordability gap grew from what was once $300 million when the initial strategy was developed to something in the $416 million range. So ensuring that these fiscal planning tools are what they actually are, and indeed kudos in terms of the 1% recommendation that has come forward, that'll be $29 million a year. But how does that feature into the long-term capital affordability strategy? Because certainly you would imagine the $29 million over 10 years and $416 million, those two numbers have a big gap in between them. So filling that gap and how that's going to be done through public policy, and how that'll include the private sector, and perhaps this review, as we see it, with the regional effectiveness team, will be able to feed into some of that conversation in terms of closing that gap.
Very good. Thank you very much. I appreciate that clarity. On the first point about the service level agreement, I'm reminded, as Mr. Noels was here and presented, it's certainly through a service level agreement that the Prosperity Initiative was first done with the Business Education Council, the BEC, and I believe that's out for a RFP right now, a request for proposals. So, perhaps more of those, and I appreciate that clarity. And I believe Commissioner Hutchings just does want to provide some clarity on the sustainability piece and the long-term strategy. Commissioner?
Thank you. And to Keith Eo's points, yes, back in August of 2011, a presentation was done regarding a gap, and it's Mr. Keith Eo has it proper. It's $415 million. The gap was in our 10-year gap, almost $41 million a year. This was then presented again in CSD. Sorry, I'm getting this wrong. So earlier last year, the gap was $415 million. We then presented another report in June. 3 commissioners, myself, Commissioner Brothers, and Commissioner Robson, and showed a gap of $368 million. Since that time, in September, staff have gone away, and public works staff and planning staff and finance staff looked at and have really scaled these projects back to what's realistic over the next 10 years, and looked at the capital financing strategy. And at this point in time, without the 368 goes with the capital financing strategy, it goes to a gap. Sorry, the 368 goes to $212 million gap. And with the capital financing strategy you mentioned at 1% per year, which we're suggesting to council, the gap is now $101 million, which is $10 million a year over 10 years. So it's gone from 415 to $101 million if council approves that 1%. If they don't, it's still gone from $415 million to $400 million. So it's a reduction of almost $208 million.
Thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner. Appreciate that.
Certainly valuable information, and precisely why we had the commentary about how the regional council and regional staff and the Chamber of Commerce do have a fair bit of alignment on our position on a number of the issues, as demonstrated by the service level agreements, the opportunity for contracting out, and looking very seriously at the capital affordability strategy.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. We deeply appreciate it, and I would ask that you either send us an electronic copy or leave it with Ms. Anderson on your way out. Again, thank you. Well, since we're live on the internet, I'm going to start with a question from somebody who's submitted this via the region's website, and then we'll see if there's anyone here present to ask a question, then we'll move to some questions that have been submitted. So this is from Kevin out of St. Catharines, and he says, apologies if I have misunderstood anything. It is impressive things to see all the comparatively low percentage increase in taxes in our region. I believe the number was 1.25% compared to other regions as high as 18%. However, I wonder how our new growth statistics at 1% compares to other regions. So I think he's talking about and you already have the graph here. How does our growth compare to other regions? Commissioner Hutchings, are you able to answer that?
I don't have the exact, I can tell you that Since 2006, our growth in 2006 was 1.6%, 2007 was 1.4%, 2008 1.3%, 2009 1.2%, last year's 2010 0.9, and last year was 1.47. So we've had a annual growth rate, I'm going to do the numbers in my head, of approximately 1.3% per year. Comparably speaking to other regions, it depends which region you're comparing to. Places like Windsor have seen negative growth rates, but to other regions in our GTA area, Durham, Peel, York, and Halton have seen 4 to 5% growth rates. When we see their increases in taxes, this is including growth. They've had huge, large growth in comparison to the Niagara region. These numbers would be much higher if we didn't include those growth rates. Every year we show council what our increase would be, comparatively speaking, without growth rates, and we're much far behind, usually 4 or 5% behind. We lack the growth in the Niagara region, comparatively speaking, to those others.
Thank you very much for that answer, and thanks to Kevin from St. Catharines for your question. I know Sean. Is Sean ready with the microphone? There he is. Sean is here in our chamber, and I wonder if members of the public here have a question that you'd like to ask directly. Okay, there being none, we do have, thanks Sean, he's on the ready, and please signal to him if you would like to ask a question to us live here. You can also, I neglected to say earlier, you can also write out your question if you're a little shy, and Sean doesn't bite, but if you are a little shy and you want to write out your question, you're more than welcome to do that, and I think they have cards in the back. We did have a couple of questions submitted prior to this. This one is from Doug in Fort Erie, but I don't think it's the mayor. But anyways, it's Doug in Fort Erie with an advanced question. Some of the questions that we asked as part of the feedback engagement process here, what are your top 5 funding priorities? And how should we direct your funds, your tax dollars? So Doug started off by saying that his top funding priorities are police, water, and sewers. And he wants us to direct more money toward road repair. But his question is, how can you control outrageous regional police budgets? His words, can the provincial government not change arbitration rules so our city will not have to keep raising our taxes? I wonder if our CAO for the... So the Deputy Chief's going to talk about the police budget, first of all, and then I think we should also have an update on the arbitration process, and maybe Mr. Trojan can do that. Deputy Chief Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the gentleman from Fort Erie for this question. I think what we all hear in this question is a concern about the rising cost of policing, and I can tell the gentleman that that's a concern that we all share. We hear it loud and clear from the community, and within the policing community right across the province, it's a common theme. Policing has become a very expensive business, and there's a number of reasons for that. A lot of some of the factors that contribute to the high cost of policing include the adequacy standards and those are standards that are set down by the province that we must adhere to. So we must provide those services, and oftentimes the public doesn't really see those services until they're needed. What the public relates to is the officer in the cruiser that they see all the time. And a lot of those adequacy standards apply to sort of the behind-the-scenes services, the emergency task force, the bomb disposal unit, community services units that serve our schools, and those things which aren't as readily seen, but they all add to the need for resources and put pressure on our budget. The investigative complexity. Over the years, the complexity of investigations has grown enormously. And I just ask members of the public to think, reading in the newspaper about criminal trials in their own experience. These trials now go on for weeks and months at a time, where that was virtually unheard of several years ago. So the complexity of those investigations, the courts are more demanding, and it takes more resources to put forward to present a thorough investigation into the courts, and of course all of that costs money. Just want to address very briefly the arbitration portion of the gentleman's question. The arbitration refers to the fact that police officers don't have the right to strike. Now, the police officers and our staff, they negotiate directly with our board through their police associations, and 94% of our police budget is made up of salaries. So any upward pressure on those awards or on the contracts obviously put great pressure on the budget, because we're such a human-rich service. You know, we operate with over 1,000 members of our service. Now, only 3 police contracts since 2008 have actually gone to arbitration. So the officers can't strike, they have a binding arbitration process, but they're free to negotiate with the boards, and, you know, in the vast majority of cases, those negotiations are successful. So only 3 since 2008 right across the province have gone to arbitration, but I can tell you that the boards and the chiefs of police are very well aware of the concern around the arbitration process, and through the Ontario Association of Police Services Boards, they're taking active steps to speak to the government. What the arbitrators have to consider by law is the ability to pay of the municipality, so, you know, what the municipality can afford, as well as the extent to which services might be cut in order to afford any raises, and the economic situation in the community itself. So those are legal guidelines that the arbitrators must follow, but of course arbitrators are independent, and there is an appeal process and a judicial review process which the parties can activate to hold them to. But it is on the radar of certainly the police boards, and it's being actively pursued on a very regular basis, and it does add to the complexity of budgeting, and it does put pressure on our budgets.
Thank you very much for your complete answer, and I wonder if Mr. Trojan just might want to add a little bit regarding the provincial government and working with them on the arbitration process.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not an awful lot to add to what the what the Deputy Chief has said. Just beyond the policing world, there is a general concern across the province about arbitrated decisions and the impact on budgets. So Niagara, the Regional Council, have passed resolutions. We're an active participant in a group that's called the Emergency Services Steering Committee. So it's all of those employers that have emergency services, whether police, fire, or ambulance, and it's making requests of the government to take a look at the arbitration process, the supporting legislation, and the practices, and asking that the arbitrated decisions provide a clear explanation of how they've applied ability to pay, because in some instances there's a sense that ability to pay wasn't addressed in the decision. So those are some of the things that are happening across the province in regard to arbitration process.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trojan, and Deputy Chief Matthews for your answer to your question from Doug. So thank you very much, Doug, also for that question. We have another question here, and actually Mr. Jardine was supposed to present. I don't believe he's here, but he did provide us a question. So let's see if we can answer the question for him. Mr. Jardine indicated that his top 5 funding priorities were talking about closing down of lagoons in Niagara on the Lake and Stevensville. His direct, how should we direct funds? He's indicating that some of the biggest polluters in Niagara are the Niagara region and the town of Fort Erie regarding the dumping of raw sewage into sludge ponds, etc. So his question is, why has not the region and the town of Fort Erie abided by the decisions of the OMB, I presume that's the Ontario Municipal Board, in 1980 to not allow illegal extensions of sewer lines, as OMB decisions are binding? We are now pumping raw sewage back into Black Creek, an illegal act under federal and Ontario Clean Water Acts. I wonder if Commissioner Brothers can assist us. He's the Commissioner of Public Works. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there's a number of questions that were raised there. So I think just for the purposes of clarity here, that the Stevensville, Douglastown lagoons don't discharge into creeks. In fact, all of the effluent that comes from the communities of Stevensville and Douglastown are pumped directly to the lagoons. The lagoons are a very cost-effective way of providing sewage treatment, and they're working very well. In fact, these lagoons are only operating at about 45% capacity. So we've got effectively double the amount of capacity available at these lagoons. Once the wastewater is treated, it is, it goes through 2 different ponds that are there. This meets all the regulatory requirements from the province of Ontario, for the Ministry of Environment, in terms of the discharge of effluent once it's treated. We don't discharge it into creeks. In fact, all of the residual effluent from the lagoons is pumped directly to the river. So, Mr. Chairman, in fact, we don't discharge waste from the lagoons into the streams. That may appear to be what's happening there, but in fact, all of it is piped to the lagoons. It goes through a treatment process, and all of it is pumped directly to discharge waters in Niagara River. And we monitor the quality of that effluent, and it does meet all the ministry standards. Next question that was raised, Mr. Chairman, was with reference to other overflows and the like. And since, I believe, 2007, the region, along with its municipal partners across Niagara region, have been participating in a combined sewer overflow capital works initiative. The region has set aside in the order of $6.6 million per year, where we've cost shared on a 50-50% cost share basis with area municipalities in identifying major capital works that are required to reduce the amount of combined sewer overflow that does spill into some of the ditches and so on throughout Niagara region. And this is a problem, and Commissioner Hutchings, during his comments regarding rates, talked about the difference between how much water we produce and a significant amount of extra wastewater that we treat. And this is the result of stormwaters that find their way into the municipal wastewater systems. So it is an ongoing problem for older systems. We have combined sewers that take stormwater and wastewater effluent, and during rainstorms, the systems get flooded. This is a major capital initiative, and the Niagara region has been working in partnership with area municipalities to reduce the amount of extraneous water getting into the sewer systems. Mr. Chairman, certainly from a Fort Erie perspective, I think amongst all of the partners that we have throughout Niagara region, in fact, Fort Erie has demonstrated leadership in taking this on as a major initiative in reducing the amount of combined sewer overflows throughout the town of Fort Erie. They've been very successful. They've prioritized their capital works program to reduce the amount of CSOs. They've instituted, I think, the first bylaw in Niagara region, which is a sewer discharge bylaw to reduce the amount of sump pump waters and so on that get into the systems. They've been very proactive in taking this as a serious capital works program. And I believe, to Fort Erie's management's credit here, they worked very well with Niagara region to secure the equivalent 50% funding in terms of reducing the overall combined sewer overflows effect in the town. Mr. Chairman, those are the facts as we understand them, and certainly my experience in working with the town of Fort Erie is that they take this issue very seriously and have been taking substantive steps forward in reducing the overall effect of combined sewer overflows and the corresponding effect in the environment.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Brothers, for the answer to that question. And our Commissioner of Integrated Community Planning wants to give a little bit more of an answer on that regarding, I think, urban boundaries. So, Commissioner Robson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and certainly as an adjunct to the comments that were made by Commissioner Brothers. A couple of things. The reference in the question is to OMB decisions in 1980. That was actually a seminal point in Niagara where the discussion was on our urban boundaries, and that's Niagara is one of the first jurisdictions in North America to have set urban boundaries. And so one of the interesting parts, urban service boundary, it's actually defines where you will in fact allow urban growth as opposed to rural or agricultural activity, but it also defines what that means for servicing. So again, that's in conjunction with Commissioner Brothers' answer. Since 1980, there have been some adjustments through very public and legally prescribed process, which communities have to go through. And so those are based on need and demand. The notion of extension outside of urban boundaries of services, however, the only allowance that there is for that type of thing is where there's a very clear and scientifically proven health issue. And those are quite few and far between, but I would hardly characterize them as illegal. In fact, we take those very seriously. And part of that is because of our historical development patterns, but it's not for the purpose of extending services in some random way. In fact, it is because we have planned and orderly development and have had for many years.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Robson, and I hope that provides a more complete answer for Mr. Jardine with his question there. We have another question here that was provided to us ahead of time, and this is by Harriet from Niagara Falls, who says that her funding priorities are seniors, care in housing, health, etc. And when asked how should we direct funds, or her tax dollars, she said, I would not make a suggestion until I see where the money is allocated now. We certainly have that available online, and we hope that Harriet has access to the internet, or she can talk to one of her regional councillors and get a copy of the package that was presented. Harriet has a question, and it is, I'd like to know what you spend the $8.1 million on in housing. So I would ask Ms. Beckwith, the Executive Director of the Niagara Regional Housing, to respond to that. Ms. Beckwith.
Thank you, Chair Augustine. The $8.1 million is the 2012 capital budget for Niagara Regional Housing. And for the first time, it includes an exceptional item that we've never had before. There's $4.5 million in that total that's for a community remediation project. And that project is going to be financed through Infrastructure Ontario, and the community itself will pay back the loan for that particular $4.5 million. The balance, and I think this is more to your question, the balance of $3.6 million is for capital repairs to the portfolio that's owned by Niagara Regional Housing. Niagara Regional Housing owns over 2,600 units of affordable housing, 35 apartment buildings, and over 850 townhouses and houses. And the repairs, actually the replacements, we would be talking about under a capital budget are items like roofs and elevators and windows and floors, all of the things that are of a capital nature and have a long life associated with them.
Thank you very much for that answer for Harriet. Thank you. Appreciate that. We received another question here from our live streaming off the Region of Niagara's website. Now, this person doesn't put their name, and I would certainly encourage other questions to please include your name on there. But this is an interesting question. I think it's a slightly political question, so I think it's going to be addressed to the regional chair. Could we not all save money if we were one government instead of separate municipalities? When will thought be given to one Niagara like the GTA? How's that, Mr. Chair, if you want to take a stab at that?
I think for that. Actually, the review of government is a very good question, and it's been talked about in our region for as long as I can remember, since at least 1970. This council, at the beginning of this term, decided that yes, we are going to have a discussion about governance. Now, so far this year, we've been dealing with a number of very big issues, and governance has not made it to the radar. I believe, and I know our staff have been working on it, that governance probably means something different to almost every resident of the Niagara region. And so we are putting an item together that I hope to be out before the end of December, which simply says, what does governance mean to you? And we will want public input. Yes, we know it's about the number of politicians. Yes, it's whether there's two-level coverage like was suggested in St. Catharines. Should the chair be elected at large or done in the current format? Those are all governance issues. Another example, when we started talking about water, wastewater, governance could be a utility model that works for all our communities and most of all works for our residents to ensure that they are getting in their rate the best value for money. So it's going to be a wide gamut. When it first comes up, which I'm hoping we will start the discussion, there's been a lot of reports done already. In fact, Brock, their research department has already started some of those discussions, and we're going to benefit from Niagara College, from Brock University, from input from residents. It's a tricky subject. A lot of us think that it's about cost when you're talking about the number of councils or politicians in general. I certainly don't think it is about the cost of the politicians, but that's up for debate. So I just want to say I like the question. We are going to start the discussions in this term and hopefully this year, because the residents want that discussion. And I think as we're trying to be more clear, the budget process for one, let's get this discussion open. Let's talk about the 50 issues that might be termed governance, and let's talk and make a decision. I think it's useful because without facts, in Niagara Lake, we always thought if we don't have the facts, we'll make them up anyway. I'm no longer in Niagara Lake and won't be allowed back either. But I think the important thing is let's have a meaningful discussion. Let's not all get angry with ourselves. Let's see what is right for the Niagara region. Sorry, I'm rambling, but there you go.
Thank you very much for that answer, Mr. Chair. A very complete answer for a question. And I would just like to add, you talked about facts, that Brock University, I'm trying to find it here on a website, Brock's website, but I know with their Niagara Observatory, they recently put forward a document about governance and the cost of governance. And I know that as part of that presentation, they indicated, or they're hopeful, that that will provide a background or a basis upon which we can have some of those discussions for governance in Niagara. So thank you very much for that answer. Thank you to Brock for that policy paper, and we look forward to that discussion. We have another question here from Kara, whose funding priorities were improved regional transit, greater use of alternative financing procurement in regional capital programs, and her question is, what is the current status of the Niagara-on-the-Lake wastewater treatment expansion relocation project? Will it be reflected in the 2012 water capital budget or in some future year? Now, Kara is from Lincoln, but she's interested in Niagara-on-the-Lake. I'm going to turn back to Commissioner Brothers for that answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess this comes on the heels of the former question because Niagara-on-the-Lake wastewater facilities are lagoons as well. The difference between this and the Douglastown condition is that these lagoons are at capacity. So this is an active file that we have right now, Mr. Chairman. We're undertaking an environmental assessment. Because it's on Parks Canada lands, it constitutes a federal environmental assessment as well as a provincial environmental assessment process. So we hope to have that evaluation completed, in fact, the first quarter of 2012. There will be public meetings to that effect where we'll be selecting, proposing the final site for the construction of a new wastewater treatment plant. This won't be a lagoon system, Mr. Chairman. It's intended to be a LEEDs or a very efficient use of energy-based secondary treatment process for Niagara-on-the-Lake. Since 2007, Mr. Chairman, we've had sequential funding in the order of $3.7 million to undertake the pre-design and to undertake the environmental assessments, and we're still working off of those particular funds. We do have set aside or projected funding in 2013 in the order of $43 million, which is the estimate of the overall capital costs of the project. And it's not that we'll spend all the money in that particular year, Mr. Chairman, as you know. It's about securing the funding for the overall project at the time of approval. So, Mr. Chairman, we're on the cusp of bringing forward to the public, our staff and from the public's representations, what the final site and type of technology will be for the wastewater treatment plant in Niagara-on-the-Lake. We'll be bringing this forward in the first part of the new year. And we would, I'd also like to comment, Mr. Chairman, we are seeking additional sources of federal funding. It's an active file that we are working through the chair's office on this as we speak. And, stay tuned on that. We're hopeful that we'll be able to secure additional funding. If not, this will be funded through the water and wastewater rates program. In fact, it'll be the wastewater rates that will support this. So stay tuned. We've got information coming in the new year, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for your answer to the question from Kara in Lincoln. Thank you very much, Kara, for your question. We have another question here. This is off of the region's website. It says that the Public Health Department has a huge budget. What are they doing to cut costs, especially public health, when they are not traditionally available 7 days per week? I would ask Dr. Yeager to respond to that question. Doctor?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for the question, because it gives me the opportunity to highlight some issues. The cost from the public health budget on the levy proposed for 2012 is $6.9 million, and $6.9 million is a large number by any stretch of the imagination. The proposed cost to the individual taxpayer is $31.88. People have said that public health is doing its job well when nobody knows what we're doing, because what we do largely behind the scenes. So I'd like to address the issue of the 7-day coverage a little bit. Public health does in fact function 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Myself or the other two physicians are on call 1 and 3 for all that time, responding to questions from the public, needs from physicians, questions from the emergency room, and natural or unnatural disasters that may arise. We also have environmental health inspectors on call all the time, as well as our managers and nurses from the infectious disease program, responding to requests from nursing homes in terms of outbreaks, helping with the most famous recent outbreak, the C. difficile outbreak at the Niagara Health System. And also our community health mental workers are also on call. So that, I think, covers a little bit of the 24/7 coverage. That being said, we are always conscious of our costs, and certainly within the past couple of years have been working very, very hard to maintain them, which led to our 5-cent increase of 2012 over 2011. I'd just like to highlight, in terms of the activities that public health does, we're running 49 different programs and probably touching many things that taxpayers see and come in contact with every day, but luckily they're not coming in contact with them in a negative way, so everything seems that it's running the way it should, such as in healthy food, inspection of restaurants, inspecting beaches, and ensuring safe recreational water. So I hope that answers some of the question about the money and the range of services.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yeager, for that answer to the question here. Thank you for that. Sean is ready with the microphone. Is there anybody here that would like to ask a question via Sean and the microphone? This is anybody here present. We've had a couple of questions in advance through the region's website and also online as part of our live streaming. We have a very shy audience here this evening, and that's okay. So thank you, Sean. Sean is always at the ready, so just signal to him if you do have that burning question. So thank you for that. When Kara from Lincoln spoke about one of her funding priorities, it was improved regional transit. And we had another question here from an earlier session about the Niagara region expanding Niagara Regional Transit. So when will Niagara Region expand Niagara Regional Transit to other municipalities throughout the region? I think this question relates to the pilot project that we're running on transit, and I would ask perhaps our Commissioner of Public Works, who's charged with that, Mr. Brothers, to help us in that area. Can you answer that question, please, Commissioner?
Certainly take a shot at it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that. Certainly that's the intermunicipal transit has been a hot item as of late since the recent initiation of the pilot. So this is a test program where we're linking hub to hub between Niagara Falls, Welland, and St. Catharines, and this is as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, it's a pilot program. What it means is that we'll be looking at improvements in terms of the number of stops where the buses could go, to look at it, to expedite the routes about moving people across the Niagara region. And there's been a number of municipalities that have expressed some interest in terms of maybe providing stops other than the current communities that are participating. So I think we are open for suggestions. I think what we want to do is to get walk before we run here a little bit, get the stability of getting the ridership up, getting people used to the services. There's been a lot of interest with the students at Brock and Niagara College, and we have ongoing discussions with them to increase the number of ridership and provide enhanced services for our students going to our community colleges and universities. We're certainly looking at increasing the ridership for people trying to get to work right across Niagara region. So, Mr. Chairman, I believe that once we get up and running and we're able to kind of look at the fare structures which are under review, that there will be ample opportunity to consider additional routes and stops. Clearly, if there's capital cost involved with this, Council will be reviewing information that's been brought forward in terms of the service levels that are in play and whether we're reaching our targets in terms of revenue that would be generated to partially offset the cost of this service. It's an expensive service, but I think overall what I've heard from Council, Mr. Chairman, is that this is an important initiative in Niagara region to strengthen the service between the existing transit providers across Niagara region, and we're certainly open to looking at additional stops, additional communities that wish to be serviced, and consider this in the broader pilot initiative for this transit pilot program. So, you know, it's a pilot we've just initiated, and we look forward, Mr. Chairman, for future improvements.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for answering that question about intermunicipal transit and how we can look forward on that and see how that pilot is proceeding. So thank you very much for that. I've sent an email here to staff, to Daryl. I'm wondering if there's any more questions online. We haven't received any. He's shaking his head. And Sean is at the ready. I don't think there's any more questions here. Are there? Any burning questions? So I think we're going to move then. Thank you very much. We've certainly had a good dialogue this evening, and once again I appreciate the regional councillors that are here. Councillor Teal from Fort Erie, Councillor Barrick from Port Colborne, Councillor D'Angela representing the City of Thorold, Regional Chair Burrows. Before we conclude, I would ask Mr. Trojan, who is the CAO, the Chief Administrative Officer for Niagara Region, to provide us some closing comments. Mr. Trojan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We certainly want to thank everyone for their participation tonight. The feedback has been helpful to us. We hope the information has been helpful to those that chose to attend and for those that followed us online as well. What we'll do now is we'll take the feedback and the questions that we've received from this session, as well as the session that we held in Lincoln some time ago, and prepare a report for Council's consideration. So all of the input that we received will be shared, and it will assist Council in their budget discussions. For those that still haven't had the opportunity and wish to avail themselves, we have a few other dates, public events where budget will be the topic of discussion. Tomorrow, our capital budget, budgets for police and NEDC will be considered. So that's November the 3rd. Niagara Economic and Development Corporation. November the 10th, there'll be another budget review committee of the whole session where we'll deal with all of our rate budgets for water, wastewater, and waste management. And then on December the 1st, there'll be a full budget review. So that's sort of the culmination of the many hours of budget discussions that have taken place, and Council will debate the budget that night. So folks are welcome to attend that as well. And all of those events will be in the Council chambers at regional headquarters. For those that choose to look closer at some of the budget information, it is online. Our website, www.niagararegion.ca, is where you can access that information, and you can also go online and you can ask questions of us on the budget, and we'll try to get back to you as quickly as we can with those answers. So thanks again for those that chose to attend tonight and follow along. We want to thank Council, Regional Chair Burrows, and Council for supporting us in going out to the public. This was some of the feedback that we received from the sessions that we had last year. The public wanted us to have it not just at regional headquarters, but get out in the community at a couple of different municipal locations. So that's in response to that feedback. I want to thank all the staff, senior staff who attended tonight, including those from our agencies, boards, and commissions, and also our staff who technical staff that allowed for this to happen. So thanks again to everyone for participating.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trojan. We appreciate your thank yous. I do want to extend a thank you as well to the town of Fort Erie for allowing us to use their beautiful council chamber for this webcast and for this event. So thank you very much to Mayor Martin and members of council staff here in Fort Erie for this. I would like to also thank those that brought questions forward and the delegations that we had this evening, both Mr. Noyles and Mr. Malwanzia. And he's given me the thumbs up. I do have his name correct. Thank you very much for correcting us on that. But thank you for your presentations, and look forward to reading those as well. And I know that my council colleagues will as well. So on behalf of Regional Chair Burrows and regional councilors that are here and Regional Council, I want to say thank you very much for participating, and look forward to your involvement as we continue through this budget process. Thanks again. Have a good night.